Good afternoon and welcome to Keys to Charting an Optimal Zero Trust Journey, a health system CIO production sponsored by Zscaler. Just a little housekeeping before we get started. My name is Anthony Guerra. I'm the founder and editor-in-chief of a health system CIO, and I'll be your moderator today. We're looking forward to your questions or comments. You can send them in at any time in the Q&A box, and we'll take them later in the program. Just so you see how we're going to spend our time today, first we're going to go about 35 to 40 minutes with our main panel discussion featuring Erik Decker, VP and CISO with Intermountain Healthcare, Greg Garneau, System VP and CISO with Hospital Sisters Health System, and Tamer Baker, Healthcare CTO with Zscaler, and then we will have our Q&A. So let's jump right in. Erik, we're going to start with you. Can you give us an overview of your organization and your role?
So Erik Decker, I'm the VP and Chief Information Security Officer. I say CISO. I fight all of those who say CISO.
Oh, I never heard
I don't.
CISO. No, that's
That one I
out.
don't understand. So, anyways, CISO, Intermountain Health. We are an integrated delivery network that is located in the Mountain West region. So we have 6 states, headquartered in Salt Lake City. 34 hospitals, lots of coverage. We break our healthcare delivery organization into 3 markets, 3 regions. And we also have a health plan which covers 1 million+ lives. So that's the integrated delivery network side of Intermountain Health. We are all in on value-based care and risk-based capitated models for reimbursement and caring for our people. And our mission is to help people live the healthiest lives possible. So we very much walk that walk and talk that talk.
Excellent. Thank you, Erik. Greg?
Hey, good afternoon. Greg Garneau, System Vice President and CISO with Hospital Sisters Health System. Hospital Sisters is a integrated network, healthcare network serving Wisconsin and Illinois, headquartered in Springfield, Illinois. We are a nonprofit Catholic health system. I've been with the organization for just over a year now, and been very happy to be serving its mission, serving those underserved and rural populations. We have about 13 hospitals, as I mentioned, 4 in Green Bay and the rest in central and southern Illinois. And happy to be here today.
All right, Greg. Thank you. Tamer?
Hey, I'm Tamer Baker. I'm the healthcare CTO at Zscaler. Zscaler has a dedicated healthcare vertical supporting well over 600 healthcare organizations globally at this point. Our mission is to help organizations in healthcare secure, simplify, and transform. So we're here to help you be more secure, reduce your risk, simplify it, removing a lot of the overhead and helping transform and modernize the way you do both networking and security.
All right, excellent. Very good. We're going to jump right into the meat of it here. Erik, let's start with you. Zero trust is a widely used term, but interpretations can vary. How would you define it for a health system, and how does it differ from traditional security models?
Zero trust is it's actually gotten a little bit of a I don't want to say a bad name, but it's kind of got its own name. It started off in a very networky sort of specific context, and then it kind of morphed from there. The thing I like to think about zero trust is it's a mindset and an architecture at the end of the day towards driving with the realization that no environment, and note I'm not saying network, I'm saying environment. No environment is generally can be deemed as safe. So you have to design to zero your security controls, your processes for your businesses, and with the understanding that you operate in a hostile environment, generally speaking. So the idea that the internet is unsafe, but the network inside your 4 walls is safe, that's a fallacy.
Mm-hmm.
So the zero trust mindset for me is an adversarial mindset. How does the adversary work? What do they do? What are their tactics? What are they deploying? And I mean like specifically, what are the types of actions and activities that they deploy, and then building your environment in such a way that contemplates not just a direct response to a specific type of tactic or playing the cat and mouse game, but you're building your environment in a manner that doesn't allow for the adversary to work in that construct. So there's a lot of different ways that you could accomplish this. Of course, there is technology that can help you with that. But if you don't start with a strategy and a design and an architecture for like what this all looks like, you can't bolt this on. Like you have to rethink your defensive capabilities.
Excellent. Very good. That's a great start. Greg?
Yeah, and just kind of bolting on to what Erik had mentioned. So as you look at zero trust from a system perspective and your ecosystem, it is looking at how you defend against all threats much differently, right? The notion of your four walls, or what do they say? Your castle is your defense. The castle is no longer a castle, and it's pretty much the world now. And as you look at interconnected medical devices and how do you protect and secure those and your environment with all the folks who have transitioned to hybrid or remote work, how do you protect your world there as well? So it's taking an approach that everything is a threat, and how do you mitigate against those threats within your environment? And it's people, process, and technology. It's not just buying tools to make this happen. We all understand that, and it's designing and architecting your environment differently than you have in the past, and utilizing the tools that we have available to us in ways that secure from those adversaries. And it isn't whack-a-mole, playing whack-a-mole, right? It's sending um, signals to your organization that we are going to do things differently in order to protect our environment given the threats that we face in healthcare every day.
Very good, Greg. Thank you. Tamer?
Yeah, so I mean, they did a great job explaining it. I love both concepts of what they just added to this. What I would just say is just something that Erik had said, which is a mindset. It is an organizational mindset where you're not, zero trust is something that the entire organization has to get behind. So, if you're a security person and you want zero trust in your environment, well, that means not only is your infrastructure team needs to get on board and understand the capabilities and the benefits of it, but also your CMIO and the clinicians and the practitioners and everybody else out there should all be behind this mindset of it. Oftentimes, I think, Erik, the first thing you mentioned, it has a negative connotation, is probably the words you were looking for. It can be a four-letter word for some organizations because they tried to do zero trust at the network layer. And if you could do it at the network layer, we probably would have done it a decade ago, right? It's just not really feasible to do it at the network layer. And they've gone through these disruptive things. So sometimes it's just a conversation, and you might change the terminology to say, we're going to modernize how we do things. We're going to modernize security. We're going to do transformation. You may not even have to call it zero trust as you're talking to other stakeholders in an organization, but you call it something different so it doesn't have that negative connotation if that exists in your environment. But it's all the same concept, right? We have to transform how we're doing things, stop putting users on the network because the network isn't quote unquote safe, right? Everything's hostile as both of them just said. So and just hide that stuff from the bad actors so that we can really get people connected the way they need to, and have the adversaries not even know what exists out there for you.
All right, well, Tamer, let's jump into the meat of this. You talk about you can't do this at the network layer, and in conversations we've had before today, um, you say that's sort of going to be very problematic, but there's other ways to do it. So I'd like you to talk a little bit about that, and then I'd like to get Erik and Greg to give their thoughts on your premise. Go ahead.
So when I think about the network layer part of it and that part of the conversation and what we're talking about here, it's still exposing yourself. So there's a couple of parts of this when I say the network layer. If you're doing it at the network level, that means you still have something exposed to the internet, something which is broadcasting online where the bad actors can still find you, see you, and attack you, right? If you're reachable, you're breachable. It's just the nut of it. If I can see you, I can eventually attack you and breach you. The other components, though, the reason why it's been so hard over the last 10 years, zero trust is not new. We all know this has been around for a long time. Um, but the challenge and the disruptions come is when you're trying to do it with ACLs and you're trying to do it with VLANs or you're trying to do it with firewall rules, and this it becomes so overly cumbersome and burdensome, it's operationally not feasible. It's difficult for IT teams to try and operationalize it and not only operationalize it, but continue to maintain it, as well as it's difficult on the end users because it becomes very disruptive for their day to day. So when I say don't do it at the network layer, that means, look, we're just connecting users to applications. We're using real world human language information to say, hey, these things should talk to these things. I'm not looking or worried about IP addresses or ACLs or any of the other stuff that comes at the network layer. All that gets stripped, all that gets hidden. And so that the users, when they are in this zero trust environment, they work just like they would normally work in their day to day. But if I had done some kind of a surveillance activity as a bad actor or an insider threat, or maybe somebody that's been compromised for some reason, everything is blind to them anyways. They can't see anything, right? They're off of the network. They're only seeing the things that they should be talking to.
All right, Greg, let's go to you. What are your thoughts on what Tamer's laying out?
So I think there's a lot of real value in what he's talking about. I think the old days of put a NAC solution in and you're safe, right? Or let's isolate VLAN everything off, and then your job is done. I think we're far from that today, and it's funny you mentioned zero trust has been around for a long time. I remember sitting in a small conference room with John Kendervig. It had to have been over 10 years ago, just talking about, or maybe 8 years ago, just talking about zero trust. And the concept was awesome and it sounded really cool. How do I explain this to everybody was the next sentence that came out of my mouth. But I think as we continue to look at how do we not just handle the users, but it's also the at least in healthcare, the technical debt that comes along with old, antiquated medical devices and Internet of Medical Things solutions, and how do we then apply the concept to those systems and securing them, because we can't necessarily upgrade them all the time and keep them at the latest and greatest. So then how do we apply this concept of zero trust to the Internet of Medical Things and medical device environment? I think that's where we spend a lot of our time, trying to see how can we implement this type of methodology to secure that world as well.
Mm. Yeah, Eric, it sounds like this is sort of a real fundamental concept we're talking about here. It's not just implementing zero trust in a greenfield perfect environment of modern technology. It's implementing zero trust on some antiquated and older technology. Your thoughts, Eric?
So I'm gonna I preach this pretty much every opportunity I can. Think like the bad guy, think like the adversary, and understand how they are breaking in and what is the motivation of the types of adversaries that are coming at you. So I'm gonna start my zero trust answer with there's four. We can argue about if it's more than four or whatever, but let's just generally say four groups of adversary that exists. Nation state, who are motivated by it could be economic, intellectual property theft, or prepositioning for geopolitical conflict, critical infrastructure situations, which is a very real concern. Organized crime. Organized crime is financially motivated. They are breaking in and they want to operate at a scale and a clip that allows them to make as much money as they possibly can. So they're not going to dwell for 400 days. Why would they dwell for 400 days? That's wasted money. They're losing revenue. They're going to go in fast and furious. Your hacktivism, people who have a political bend or a particular ideology, that they're trying to push. And then the fourth I'll add is insider threat. And the insider, it can be a couple of different things. It could be people making mistakes, unintentional insider issues, releasing data, those kinds of deals. Or it could be a malicious insider, a disgruntled employee, maybe somebody who especially in this economy where we're having a hard time with living wages and things like that, where they can make a couple thousand on the side by connecting into a local crime ring or something along those lines. Those are the four groups that, generally speaking, we exist within cyber program because they exist, and our goal is to stop that from occurring. So how do they interface and how do they interact with us is the next question. They interact with us on the identity side, from a credential or from a social engineering or something along those lines. They interact with us through the network vulnerabilities, the traditional sort of attack. They interact to us through third parties that connect to us through some other back channel. We all have it, especially in healthcare, where you might have contractors that come in through some front door, or you have maybe another identity source of truth that is low quality data and not really good identity proofing, and that's another potential area in, or medical device manufacturers that deploy their own remote technology into your environment to manage all of their equipment because that's how they decided to secure it. So there's different touch points that those adversaries will interface with us on that side. So when you think in zero trust, I think, how are those adversaries, where's the crossover between the what I just described and how they interact with me? So you have it on the identity side, you have it on the network side, you have it on the remote access side, you have it on the endpoint side. And then it's a matter of, okay, so if I'm going to build a defensive program and I'm going to re-engineer my environment to be defensive to those touch points and those overlaps, then I have to assume that those layers are compromised. So I'm going to give an example. Every VPN connection that you have is a risk. Why? Because the other end of that VPN connection, that is a network, once it opens up the entirety of your network. And you have no idea what's going on the other side of that endpoint. You can do NAC things like that to kind of get to a quasi sense of, is this kosher or not kosher? But at the very nature of it, you're applying trust to a device through some means. It could be through audit, it could be through technology, it could be through whatever. You're trusting that is not going to be done in an adverse way, versus it's not possible for that endpoint to cause any damage when it connects in. Those are two very different concepts. And me, zero trust is you're building it so it's not possible. Everything is possible. I put the caveat in there. But what the real goal in this is break the playbook by which these adversaries operate at. The second you break the playbook, then they have to go off on a variance. They have to customize. They have to build a specific solution to you. And when they do that, you're increasing their drag, you're increasing their cost, and you're slowing them down. And that is the game, right? That we live in. They will always exist. They will always exist to try to cause harm, financial gain, whatever. We will always exist to try to stop all of this from happening. There is no end state cybersecurity that exists. You don't achieve cybersecurity. You are always sort of working inside of a risk construct. And we are always adjusting our ability to make this as difficult as possible for them. So that's, I'm sure we'll get to more questions about more specific things at the audience.
I thought there was a certificate that we got at the end that said you have achieved optimal cybersecurity. It doesn't exist. I guess I didn't get the memo correctly.
Tamer, what do you think? What do you think about Erik's overview there?
Yeah, no, he's spot on, obviously. He's well versed in exactly how the adversaries think and do things. The Black Basta GPT that got released makes things a lot easier to see how they did things, which is nice, getting a lot more insight in their ways. But as he mentioned, it's, remove the ability for them to even attack the way they would normally do it, right? That VPN that he talked about, probably one of the most, if not the most common entry point right now for a bad actor. They're either using credentials that they phished or stolen or social engineered to log into the VPN and have carte blanche access, or they're attacking the VPNs directly because they're exposed to the internet, and boom, now I can log in and do whatever I want. Not just VPNs, it's also other network security appliances that are internet facing, right? Those are really big entry points. If you think about a zero trust construct, there's nothing exposed to the internet anymore, right? So you don't have an entry point to begin with. So even if I did somehow get credentials phished and I now have, Greg's credentials to log in, I have nothing to log in with. I don't have a VPN to log into. I don't have a way to even enter your network, even if I have your credentials at that point. It makes it a lot more difficult for just removing that big, big honking vulnerability that exists and that big risk that exists in your environment.
Greg, anything else you want to add there?
No, I agree with everything Erik is saying. And I will add, as an institution that has suffered from one of these events in the past, and I was brought on afterwards to help build the program. This type of thinking and how do we build our defenses differently, and zero trust has to play a part in that. And rewriting the book on how we do it is super important. It's just vital.
All right, let's
I love that you
Greg,
mentioned the book. For
go
those of
ahead.
you that aren't aware, we have two books on the Zero Trust Hospital. If I can plug that for a second, Anthony. If you haven't seen it yet, Zero Trust Hospital for CXO vision, as well as the Architect's Guide, both help with this. I don't know if either one of Greg or Erik have read these, but they are great guides to, the CXO vision shows you more of a what are the benefits and value of zero trust, especially at the business level, how you approach it with other stakeholders like the board members and other folks in your organization. The architect's guide is more of like, here's the recipe of, or how to actually accomplish it. So just I had to plug that in there since Greg talked about
Yeah, no, it's
changing
good.
the book. Sorry.
That's good.
And you can find it
This
at
is-
zscaler.com/zero trust hospital if you're interested.
all right, awesome, very good. All right, let's talk about leadership buy-in. Erik, let's start with you on this.
Sure.
This idea that everyone needs to use this term new way of thinking, sort of back to the drawing board, re-architect things. So it's almost like, and again, we don't have a greenfield opportunity unless we're building a new hospital, but let's put that on the side. We have an existing infrastructure, we have existing users, we have existing processes in a 24/7 environment where everything's critical and nothing could stop. There's no timeouts. So we mentioned these concept of rethinking and re-architecting, and it's important to get leadership buy-in. And I think Tamer mentioned the CMIO, right? So the users, so if we took that as step one, tell me about how we go about that. Meaning, okay, I'm sold as the CISO. I want to go down this road. Everything makes a lot of sense. Step one is I need to get leadership buy-in. How do I do that? Who do I talk to first? There might be an order in terms of C-suite titles. And what do I say to them?
The first thing I'd say is this is a great opportunity to exercise enterprise risk management methodologies. If you have an enterprise risk management model, use that and you connect the dots between cyber. Cyber should be, well, depending on how you do your ERM. Like I'll sort of state it. I've seen it done in two ways. One where it's everybody sort of plots out their high order issues, cyber being one, HR being another, finance being another one, and you might have sub risks underneath it. The other way, which I really like, is more of a causes and consequences. So cyber isn't a thing that an organization does for the purposes of being cyber. We all know that. So it's we care for people. So we've got different types of missions. From better quality care, better increasing the patient access. So patients can get access to their doctor in a shorter time frame. Getting better quality diagnostic and therapeutic treatments. This is why we exist, is to care for people. We don't exist to put cyber in place. So the impact of understanding the consequence of a cyber attack is how you go about that conversation. So I like the thinking of cyber in an ERM context as a consequence, and then a cause, and then the consequence is you're down for 60 days. you can be down for 60 days for all kinds of reasons. Cyber is one. An earthquake that destroys everything is another one. A tornado that rips through the organization is another one. There can be all kinds of reasons why that exists. Now, in the cyber context, it's a little bit more nefarious, given the fact that it's at scale, whereas the other things I just described is very more localized. You know, a single hospital might be hit by a tornado or be impacted by a flood, but not everything. In the cyber parlance, the same systems. So think of IT. I mean, at the end of the day, bad actors are, what they do is they subvert IT. Why do they subvert IT? Because IT has all the access to control everything. So they go to where the control points are. They go to what controls everything. Of course they would. That's the path of least resistance. So when you put a proposal forward on a zero trust mindset that says we need an investment to stop to either put significant safeguards in place or build better recovery and resilience if it happens, what you're saying is we want to stop that 1 in 50-year event from occurring in the first place. Make that a 1 in 100-year event, or instead of a 1 in 5-year event, make it a 1 in 100-year event, which is the big shutdown, the big classic ransomware shutdown, unfortunately, that Greg's organization had to go through. And so by implementing some of these principles, we will take a massive risk reduction statement out of the mix, because we're going to make it harder for the bad guys to do what they do. So that some people have probably heard my talk on re-architecting Active Directory in a Bell Appadula model, which is an isolation tier model, which effectively that is a zero trust principle, a zero trust architecture that makes it hard, I'm not going to say impossible, very hard for the bad actor to jump into the environment, hit IT, and then jump up to full domain dominance. That's the game, is to make that difficult. So, and then on the flip side of all of that, continued investment, what you're talking about is, okay, now let's set different measures by what success looks like. We always say it's not if, it's when, but we still plan, generally speaking, as an industry, we still plan for if, not when. We're still saying like, oh, we're gonna stop all this stuff from happening, and oh, what was us? It happened. Oh my gosh, how did it happen? Well, we all know it's going to happen. We've been saying that for forever. It's if not when, or why? Sorry, when not if. So why don't we instead set measures that say what would resilience actually look like from a KPI perspective? Instead of it being 60 days that we're out, what if it's 5? And during that time frame, instead of going on diversion and pushing all of our patients into other surrounding hospitals and putting a burden on them, we maintain it during that 5 days when there's no technology. For acute, for specific populations, you can't do this for everything. For acute patients or for our highly vulnerable patients, if that happens and we are successful at bringing it back up in 5 and maintaining our volumes in 5, do we not win? Did we not do this the proper way? Did we not exhibit resilience? Did we not show that we are capable of managing this large catastrophic risk without causing downstream impacts on our patients? You talk like that to your business and they get it. You talk about, I need $10 million for this new technology whiz-bang thing that's going to do some stuff, and they're going to go, what are you talking about?
I need a
Greg?
big, bright, shiny box. It's going to make it all go away. Give me $10 million. Yeah. No, I couldn't agree more. And what Erik is outlining in terms of discussions, I had as I walked in the door. These are the things we need to start preparing for. Now, most organizations who haven't been impacted yet haven't had the opportunity to say, well, you guys remember what that felt like. Do we want to do that again? And obviously the answer is no, we don't. So building out, getting this type of program into your system is easier if the experience is so near to everybody's memory. But it's also about, what do we do differently? How do we build a better resiliency program? How do we reduce time to restore? to something that's manageable, doesn't impact patients as negatively, doesn't impact revenue cycle, having to go back 2 months later and trying to read what somebody wrote in handwriting, and how do you bill for something like that, right? So all of these factors play into it, but in terms of how do you get your leadership to buy in, it's the risk and consequence of not doing this that I think it has to be something that you spend your efforts on evangelizing to your board and your other leaders. I like the approach of going through ERM, because there's, you take this to your senior leadership team in outside of the risk framework, and it's a much more difficult sell if you haven't been involved in one of these events. If you have been involved in these events, everybody remembers it, everybody's got PTSD from it. You don't have to sell it, right? But what you have to do is sell how you do business differently going forward, especially on the resiliency side of the house. There's a lot of effort in that space for sure.
Tamer?
So two quotes come to mind that I want to bring up, and both of these are referenced in my book. The one, the CIO of a major health system, everybody knows this health system. I'm going to paraphrase it. I don't remember. I don't have it in front of me exactly, but he said, we can't continue to modernize by putting new applications and new things into 1999 architecture. It just doesn't work. We can't do this anymore. It's too hard to do it. It's too hard to do it safely. It's too disruptive to do it. So that was his mindset with pushing from the top down, actually getting this modernization done with this approach and this change of architecture so that you can better innovate and modernize and do things faster, easier, so that you're, as a cyber person, you're actually enabling the organization to do more and innovate more, right? Because you've changed the way you do things in a way now that I can implement new technologies, AI, the next Da Vinci robot, that whatever it may be, I can do it faster, easier, safer. The other quote that came to mind was a CISO, and this CISO said, "Look, by doing this, I can just default on all my technical debt. There's so much tech debt with doing it the old way, the legacy way of infrastructure, that when you modernize this, you don't have to build on that tech debt anymore. You can default on all that debt and move forward with something new and better." Which I love. That when he said that, I told him, I was like, I'm gonna steal this from you and I'm gonna tell everybody that this quote, because it was a fantastic analogy. Like, this tech debt, you'll never get through. You'll never pay off that debt. But if I can just default on it, because this new architecture can be deployed in a more seamless way. It can be deployed side by side until you can get off of that old architecture and then seamlessly get the users on the new one. And believe it or not, the end user experience, the clinicians, they end up loving it. It's a lot easier. It's a lot simpler. If you got like remote imaging specialists, remote radiologists, they absolutely love it. It's easier, faster, better for them. It actually ends up becoming an income generation stream for a lot of health systems. When they can get more reads in per week, I can get more income generated by doing that, right? So the cybersecurity paradigm now is not just a cost center. It is there to help as an enabler to an organization.
Can I add real quick to that?
Please.
So this really got me thinking, and analogies. I love that analogy. That I think a lot of people don't understand how digital technology works. They think of it as there's a new website or there's a new application, and it's just the application is the thing. That's the stuff that works. It is like the last thing in the whole construct of all of what Tamer is talking about. That the infrastructure that actually runs all of that stuff is not sexy. It's utility. It's it's roads. I was trying to think about what's a good analogy, like a city. And I was like, there's a good visual here. Maybe I should try to work this into some future talks. So I recently, a couple years ago, went on a global tour, doing some security assessments, and we were in Manila, in the Philippines. And one of the things I was astonished by right out of the gate when we landed in Manila was you go into the streets and you look up at the line poles where all of the electrical and cables and communication stuff is hung. And it is a giant tangled mess of nonsense. I mean, and I mean full-blown nonsense. Like take a giant like room-sized ball of wires, bundle it up into a giant knot, and hang it. That's what's going on in Manila. Now try to build a new building and find out how to connect that building to communications and power in the middle of all of that nonsense. And then, come back into the States. And sometimes we do this really well, sometimes we don't. But like in a really well-run city, you're going to see all of that stuff is super clean. All of it's like behind the scenes. You don't even see it because it's just so well maintained and so operated. Most of our healthcare technology is the Manila bundling wired mess, where we're trying to figure out how do you pull that thread and untangle that knot one line at a time. And when we're talking about zero trust, and you're saying throw zero trust in the middle of all of that, it's like, oh my, okay, we can't really do that. We can't really redo all, like we can't pull each wire one at a time. We got to go build another pole and then like put a whole new line this thing up in the way we want to do it, and then we're going to blow the whole thing out that's over there and transition it over. Nobody sees that you're doing that because if you do it right, actually nobody will know that you did it at all. That's actually a definition of success, is you can actually implement zero trust without the business even realizing that you did. But that's the challenge that we have. And so that's, yeah, hopefully, I don't know. Thought it was an interesting visual.
But and Tamer, your premise is that can be done with the approach you're recommending in your books and whatnot, and as you've expressed it already today, correct?
And not only can be done, but has been done. There's plenty of health systems that have gone through this and have done it.
And I
So
think
go
that
ahead,
not
Greg.
so much the buy-in too of the leadership, because as we talked about earlier, if we tell them this is by implementing this solution, we're gonna cut down the opportunity for bad things to happen for a prolonged period of time. It's getting your other partners on the IT side of the house, right? Who built the big giant bundle of fun, and that it's their baby that they want, and now we've got to help them understand that this new thing is going to be better for everybody. That I think is part of the biggest sell in this, is getting those folks to um, buy into rebuilding a new structure and blowing out the old.
Last time, sorry, Anthony, I don't
No,
know if you
go
have another
ahead.
question, but last time I had generated a report, I looked at to see who the business owners were out of our customers. And it turned out to be 51% was the CISO team, the security side, and then 49% was the CTO and infrastructure side. So believe it or not, like it's not always run and a led thing by security. Infrastructure can buy into it fairly quickly and easily, especially, if they're running it, then it makes it an easy sell to security. It was like, hey, we're going to do this and you guys are going to get big security out of it as well, and it becomes a partnership. It is definitely harder to go from security to in talking to the infrastructure team, because sometimes they are, and this is probably not politically correct way of saying it, but they're afraid of change, right? I've been doing it this way. This is all I know. How do I change it? Because it's a complete different mindset and how you do infrastructure. Like, how do I get my heads wrapped around this? And my answer to that, I always look, the skills that you have today are transferable skills, right? This is not something that, you have to learn from scratch. These are skills that can be transferable, for one. And two, once you've actually learned it and adopted it, which is a very not a steep ramp because it is an easier, elegant solution, you're going to wish they had done it 10 years ago, right? Because it frees up so much of your time to focus on other things, right? So it is getting buy-in on that side. If you're on the call and on this webinar and you're a security person trying to figure out how to sell this also to your infrastructure teams, sometimes it can be a challenge. Hopefully you guys work well together and it's not an adversarial thing. We do know those organizations exist. But there's a lot of benefit for that side of the house as well for them.
I want to add on to that a little bit more. Um, some elements of this will make their lives easier. Some elements of this will make their lives harder. Their lives being IT. And Tamer's right. Like the biggest change that happens with when you implement this stuff is you're changing the way IT does their work. Why are we changing the way IT does their work? This is the hardest part, is getting them to understand they are the target of the bad guy. Like there was an old organization I was in, we ran pen tests, and there was this system admin who every year we ran the pen test, he got owned. Every year. And he was like exacerbated by this. He was like, why is it always me? And I was like, because you're the guy that has all the access. It's just obvious that it's going to go to you, and it's not hard to figure out it's you. From a total black box kind of mindset, like nobody has any idea anything about this organization. You could run queries, you could run net use commands, Windows native features, and you can find you. And so what we're doing is, yes, we're changing the way you're doing your work, because if you come in from your productivity workstation, you're managing the entire IT stack from your productivity workstation, talking about a specific endpoint. Guess what? That's exactly what the bad actor is going to do. Exactly. Because that's the path that they're going to follow. If you break that and you make it not possible for them to do that, the bad actor can't follow it. What do you then have to do? What do you have to introduce? Well, you have to introduce that IT person a new way of doing their work, which is different. Is it slower? Yes, it is, because you have another workstation or a PAW or whatever, another pathway thing that you're going to have to go through it, a different IT system that does the IT work versus like your regular employee work. I'm sorry, but it has to be, because the consequences of your job being a little easier is the entire organization gets shut down for 60 days.
Mhm.
That doesn't scale. And once when we introduced some of this at Intermountain, we went on a big communication tour, and I think I did probably 10 talks. And I said at the beginning of every talk, you're going to go through 5 stages of grief. And I'm sorry. I'm apologizing right now, but I'm also telling you there's not going to be a negotiation. When you get to the negotiation phase and you come to me and you ask for a negotiation, we're not negotiating. And the reason why we're not negotiating is because this is what the actors do. This is the adversary. If I negotiate with you, I'm negotiating with the adversary, and I'm giving them the same path. It's going to take time to come through this. It's going to take time for you guys to get your head around it, and we're here to help. We're here to help, sort of work you through the process. But eventually you'll get to acceptance. And we will optimize this as much as we absolutely can. Our goal is not to introduce friction for no purpose. But there's a change coming, so I found that useful.
That's specifically a little the friction and change on the IT teams, but your end users, your
Didn't
clinician,
even know.
it's security in the background. It's seamless.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you turn into being an enabler more for the business side than you ever have in the past, and you allow them to do their work more efficiently.
That's
Yeah.
right.
Wow, that was great stuff. And that sort of 5 stages of grief, that's what I feel like when I'm telling my kids a no for something. I'm like, you just need to work through this. There's no negotiating, so just, process. So very funny. But so okay, so it sounds to me, tell me if I've got this right. Um, Traditionally, it's going to be the CISO who becomes the true believer on zero trust as the way to go forward. So there is going to be the one that says, this is something we need to do. One of the biggest challenges is going to be getting IT on board, including network and infrastructure, all those people. All those people are under the CIO. So does it make sense to say that the first sale the CISO has to make is to the CIO, who runs IT, and will then help push this down and provide support? Even if the CISO is running point on this, the CIO is going to give them that support with IT when they try and do the end around and go to the CIO and say, hey, we don't want to do this, we don't want to do this. CIO's got to be on board. Sounds like that's even more important than the users, because as we said, the effect on the users is going to be minimal. I'd like to go around the horn on that. Tamer?
So I don't know if I would blanket statement the way that you said it, because it's really organizational dependent. And also, I think I mentioned right about half of the time this project is actually born out of the CTO side. It's not always the CISO side trying to convince
Okay.
the CTO. Um, if you have an organization that is not as siloed and teams working well together, the CISO can have those conversations with CTO. You don't have to get mom or pop on board to kind of tell that to them, right?
Hmm.
However, I will say there's so much organizational benefit at the CIO level. You definitely want them to understand, be on board anyways, right? So it's not to get them to convince the CTO team. It's more of like, here's the value that you're going to see across the board, and here's the value that now you understand when you do have the conversations with your peers in the organization, right? So I think a lot of it is, there's a lot of value from that level. The other piece of it I would say is inertia is probably one of the hardest parts of this, and inertia at the bottom, right? And when I say bottom, I don't mean that in a negative connotation, but the hands-on keyboard folks, right? The inertia at those levels is really difficult. And if you don't have the leadership at the top, the CIO, the CISO, the CTO, promoting this and driving this, you'll never overcome that inertia. So we need that buy-in also just to make sure we can get over that inertia to change, that inertia to modernize, to transform, and do things differently. Without that buy-in from the leadership level, Erik would never be able to do what he was talking about, and, and
Right.
and to be able to say no negotiation, right? Like you have to have the buy-in from leadership to do that. And it's not difficult to get the CIO's buy-in, and there's many occasions where this was driven from a CIO. I think I mentioned one of the quotes I said that modernization was driven from that CIO down, anyways. It's just once you have the ability to tell them the business value across the org, the CIO can be bought in pretty easily.
Excellent. Greg, your thoughts?
So I'll say not all CIOs are created equal. I think
Yes,
the
that's true.
relationship
Yeah.
with CIO and CISO, let's call whatever we want to call it today.
Don't say so.
It can be different in various organizations. Like I benefit from working very collaboratively with the CIO here, but our org structure is different. I don't report up through the CIO, so it's important for us to be able to um, help them understand the why and where the benefit is from a risk mitigation perspective. And for us, it was a true partnership, and it was an easier sell. In fact, that whole CIO, CTO, and then the folks, the operational folks, hands on keyboard, there was buy-in, and that helped because it came from the top. But I can also see, at times where there could be um, more friction in between CIOs and CISOs, and how do we get them to understand the need for this when they have so much other work that they have to do, and they don't view this as mission critical. And it's that helping them understand it is in fact mission critical to change how we do security to protect from these adversaries that Erik and I and Tamer have been talking about all day here today.
Erik?
Yeah, so it leadership in general, some stuff that I've learned, especially with the federal work that I've learned, where I have zero authority over people. I can't place an edict and then assume that people are going to go out and do this. What I've learned in my career is leadership is about building your coalition. And the CIO is part of the coalition, of course. Um, my personal preference on working through this is to work with my team, and my team is my peers, and get them under, like, what are we talking about? What do we need to do? Get their input. Nobody likes to be told what to do. It's just human nature.
Hmm.
And so if somebody steps in and says, you're going to go do this now, you're immediately going, I mean, I do it. Like you will immediately put up a barrier and be like, why? Why are you telling me what to do? It's just how we're built, right?
Uh-huh.
So to make major change, you need a coalition, and you need to bring people together. And leadership is actually not about edicts. It's about rallying and
Hmm.
influencing and
Mhm.
and making that happen. Um, so the other thing that that's we're talking about a fairly technical thing here, but the job of the CISO is just as much to figure out when brakes need to be applied, as well as when to let off the brakes, and help the organization understand that difference. It's actually it's a very like it's a really interesting job because you have to know the technology
Mm-hmm.
to know what is actually possible to happen, and you have to know business.
Mm-hmm.
You have to know both things, and you have to be able to like do this calculus in your head all the time about like what are we talking about here, how bad is this thing going to be, and can we just back off of that thing, because it's not really that big of a deal, or oh my gosh, no, that thing is a huge problem. We should not be trying to negotiate around it. So I the way I advise my team, my cyber team, my cyber leaders, is think about this as the difference between possible and probable. Simple, very simple risk calculation here. I am not a believer of risk quantification. I think that we spend way too much. That's a whole other topic.
You
At,
do a
at
whole
the end of the
webinar on that
day,
alone.
at the end of the day, what we're doing is I'm going to put another analogy together. We're building an interstate we're building the Autobahn. And we want that Autobahn to be as safe as possible and allow people to go screaming down that thing as fast as they want to go. To do it as safe as possible means that you have to have good long stretches that are available, good warning signs, good guardrails, good all of the things that are going to show you are going to careen into a fiery death if you keep going down that route. And at the same time, our job is not to implement a bunch of potholes in the Autobahn and cause damage. So if we do that, and cyber teams can absolutely do that, they can put a pothole into that road because they are thinking, well, it has the potential to eventually maybe become a problem. Because we think, and we're skeptical people, and we're paranoid by our nature. Like we can see a possibility, we can intuit how all things can become problematic. And if we don't have a framework to operate within, we will absolutely go there, and we will absolutely be so risk averse that everybody is going to be traveling at 10 miles an hour, and that's as fast as you can possibly go, and then we'll kill the business. So that's so when I say probable versus possible, it's if you're going 100 miles an hour or 180 kilometers an hour down the Autobahn and you have a sharp 90-degree turn and you don't slow down, what's going to happen? You're going to go careening off the Autobahn. Guaranteed. Probable. If you have good signs, good, slow turns, good banks, good, all those things to allow you to continue to move, and you're probably not going to do it. It's possible. It's a possibility statement. It's a fine risk equation for us to continue to allow that forward. So as part of getting credibility within the cyber program, part of that, what we're doing is we're constantly withdrawing and depositing credits. And the credits are how much do they trust that we're here to help versus how much are we here to stop.
Yep.
And so you gotta deposit the credits. You gotta take out that drag that is unnecessary, and there is unnecessary drag. I'm telling you, there's unnecessary drag that we have implemented. And then when we implement drag, we say we're doing it because we don't want to go careening off the cliff. And you'll get the credibility, you'll get the trust, you'll get that sort of buy-in through the stakeholder management if you kind of operate that way. It's not a one-time thing, it's not a one project thing. It is a leadership quality, and it's a sort of a cultural concept that you have to implement.
Eric, that was exceptional. That's I think every CISO and every aspiring CISO should listen to that 3-4 minute segment because I've never heard the job described so well. So kudos to you. That was incredible. We have like a minute or two left. Let me get a final round of best pieces of advice. And let me frame it up this way. I'm a CISO at a mid-sized health systems. I got 4 or 5 hospitals, and I'm a strong believer in this. Maybe I've started to move. Let's say I've gotten some pushback from the IT side. People aren't really excited, and things aren't moving the way I want. Or I've having trouble with the implementation and the bundle of wires from Manila. Just your best piece of advice for someone who's a CISO heading up security, trying to move down this road. And has hit some obstacles. They could be wherever you think they're most likely. Your best piece of advice for moving forward. Greg, we're going to start with you.
Well, I mean, I'll just, can I just refer to Eric's answer?
No.
So, all kidding aside, being an enabler for your business and your business partners and the folks that you work with is really important for CISOs. Understand the tech, really understand the tech, and then understand your teams that you have that you work with, and continue to build and collaborate with them and evangelize the need for this, right? Explain the why, explain that this is good for us as an organization ultimately, and continue to partner with those folks in positive ways, and rely on the people that you are partnering with as vendors to help you with that as well. And that's my 30-second piece of advice.
That's great, Greg. Thank you. Erik?
Um, I love Greg's thing. I'll add a tactical nature to this. How we get beat today is because of a failure in hygiene. Every breach that you've seen that has been a ransomware attack has been a failure of either social engineering, so a failure to get initial login, and then ultimately compromising IT systems to push ransomware everywhere. So how does it happen? Social engineering, the fish and all that, et cetera, sure. But also service desk. If you're vetting, identity verifying based on last four digits of your social and date of birth, that's all been compromised 20,000 times over. So that information is out there. It's not safe. Multi-factor authentication, of course, is a very good thing, but you get multi-factor authentication re-enrollment attacks at the service desk now too, using bad identity verification processes. So this is what the adversaries are doing. So first thing I would be doing is, what are we doing to validate at the desk, to know that the person that's calling is who they are. The second one is you have a vulnerability exposed on the internet to the 10 billion people in the world, and it is a known exploited vulnerability. That is a specifically defined term that CISA, the Cybersecurity Infrastructure Security Agency of the Department of Homeland Security, they produce a list that they keep updated on a daily basis that says these are what the adversaries, the bad actors, are using today to break in and cause damage. Go fix them. 3, you've got a third party that's connected to you in some way that's likely risky. A permanent VPN connection, maybe a VPN without multi-factor authentication, maybe a Citrix server that they log into without multi-factor authentication, something, some way that people are interfacing with your organization. Go figure out how they're doing it, and then go make sure that those are not risky connections. That's the break-in point. That's landing on the beaches of Normandy. That is not the game. The game is IT. And IT is all about privileges and privileged credentials. So the third thing or fourth thing that I would really recommend people to do is get a handle on your privileged credentials. Where are they? Where are they exposed? How often are they rotated? Or do you have workstations that everybody's running local admin as the regular user on your workstations? Good God, get rid of that, like right now if you are. How's your IT people like managing the server environment? Is it the same credential that they're using for their email? Get rid of that right now. Switch them over to a secondary account. Those kinds of things. Though all of those are points that will make it harder for the bad actor to leverage into that. That's not zero trust. That's hygiene. But you can't really get to zero trust before you get your hygiene, under order.
I will say, Erik, for the audience, that I did an extensive interview with Erik regarding his approach to Active Directory that is on our website. So feel free to do a search for his name and that will come up.
Yeah, I'll recommend that for any of our colleagues out there.
Wow, awesome. All right, Tamer, we'll give you the last word.
So I'll keep it short and simple. You're not in it alone, right? So if you're struggling and you're trying to figure out ways to do this internally, or whatever your issues are, please know that you have partners that are vendor partners, potentially your strategic partners. I call all of our customers our partners because that's how I see every one of you. But you also have peers that have gone through this. You're not reinventing the wheel. Like I said earlier, it has already been done across many organizations. So ask for help. if you don't know who your peers are that have gone through this, you can reach out to somebody like me. I can put you in touch with your peers. You're just not in it alone. That's the biggest piece of advice I can give you on this part.
Awesome. Wonderful. Well, that's about all we had time for today. Regarding continuing education, you could use the final slide in this deck. You'll get an email when the on-demand recording is ready for viewing. If you want to work with us, you could reach out to Nancy Wilcox from our team and go to our website to register for upcoming panels. With that, I want to thank our tremendous panel. Amazing conversation. Erik Decker, Greg Garneau, and Tamer Baker, Zscaler for sponsoring, and you for attending. And with that, everybody have a wonderful day. Thank you.
Thank you.